Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Chris here. So I was thinking today we'd take a look at CMI, not the Fairlight synthesizer, but creative musical ideas. Let's dive in. So what do I mean by creative musical ideas? Basically the concept I had is that I want to start a series where every episode will be a new technique that you can use to kind of get yourself started on a song, at least. Since this is the first episode, I thought I would brush up on the last video I did on the Andertons channel where I kind of briefly touched up on this. I'm basically just going to expand on what I talked about there. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I'll link it in the description so you can see that. And yeah, let's go. I'm just going to need to grab some headphones and flick over to this side, so come with me. Alright, and we are on the other side of the table for a change. So just to touch up on briefly what I was doing in the last Andertons video. Basically I've got my reface here. It's got a couple of bleeps and bloops set up, right? Which is basically just in the key of C. Just a couple of those notes. They don't have any major minor sounds, so you can just play over it freely, which is quite nice. So you can hear it's just, or C, D, G, and G. Maybe a couple of other extra notes in there to keep it interesting. But the idea is that it's quite broad and it allows you to play anything, in this case in the key of C, over it. So you get the idea. The idea is basically that we've got some kind of random nonsense going on in the background musically that we can use as a bed almost, or a layer, like the bottom layer of our music, just to give it a bit more pizzazz, a bit more spice, you might say. So that's the first concept. So I'm just going to get that and I'm going to record it in just so we can kind of layer these things up and see what we can add to this. Let's go. Alright, so that's basically it. It doesn't really matter where I stop it because it's just going to be random anyway. So one thing I'm going to do, which is going to be very important throughout all of these, is adding a lot of space, in the sense delay and reverb. Why? Because they're not the main subject of whatever the song is going to be. The idea is that they're going to create depth by placing them way in the background of the song, real quiet, real distant, real reverbed, and far out, as they would say. And then kind of the drier material, say an acoustic piano or an electric guitar, that will go on top of these layers, and we can then add to that and make it a bit more like a full production. So we've got our first layer of bleeps and bloops, right, from the CS. I'm gonna just turn off the delay on that, and again, just record some of those chords I was playing, just so we've got a bit of an idea of how we can layer this. And I'm also just gonna chuck some reverb and delay just to push those bloops a bit in the distance. Okay, so let's add some of those chords. I'm just gonna change up the sound ever so slightly, just so it differs a bit, but be the same. Alright, lovely. So you've got your chords, you've got this lovely bed of ambience sitting underneath. Sounds a bit, mysterious, don't really know what's going on. We can kind of add to that by adding an interesting type of delay known as a crystallizer effect, where it's basically pitched delays an octave up or down or whatever. But again, adds a bit more of this bed of ambience. Let's try it out. So that sounds lovely. I think I'm just going to filter it off. So even though we have all the high notes, it's not going to be as bright and present and in your face. We'll, again, tuck it more in the background. Lovely. I just added a little bit of an LFO to that filter, so it's like slowly closing and opening, you know, adding a bit of this movement that's not necessarily to the grid, you know, so it's just, again, just more ambience, randomness, all of that good stuff. So next off, I want to try this similar example, but with a piano, just to show you that, like, it doesn't have to be a foreign sound. You can use it on guitar, on piano, you know, on any type of kind of relatively simple instrument, but with the same type of effect, you know, but a different character. So let's try that. All right, so here I've got the Spitfire Labs soft piano. It's absolutely free. I would recommend you check it out if you want a lovely sounding acoustic piano for the price of nothing. So again, let me just add some, I guess, bleeps and bloops, but in piano form, and you'll just see how it translates. You get the idea. So I'm just going to take off those chords and play something else in the key of C, just so you get more of an idea of what it sounds like piano on piano. And again, I'm just going to add some delay, some reverb, maybe an arpeggiator in there to kind of give it some movement, but you get the idea. So with the power of editing, it's now 2 hours later. I had to deal with a couple live things, but nothing serious. So we're back. And basically, I just want to finish what I was saying about note choice. So basically, when I was picking these, I kept it relatively simple. We're in the key of C. So I play a C, do a G, which is the fifth, no minor major sounds. Add a D, again, no minor major. It's like a sus2 or whatever. Those three notes on their own definitely allow you to play on top of it without it being too chaotic or, you know, too crazy harmonically, that whatever you play on top is gonna, you know, it's gonna clash. So keeping it simple helps. So I just want to quickly break down what I did with the arpeggiator on the piano, because I think it's quite interesting. But basically, how your normal plugins work is they run one into the other, right? So the sound goes into one plugin, gets affected, and then that affected sound goes into the next slot, etc., right? It goes up like that. So what you can do in Ableton, which the equivalent would just be creating a duplicate track on your DAW. What it allows me to do internally is I can do it in parallel. So I'm running two of the same signal that's being affected differently, right? So each side of the signal is being affected differently. So what I've done in this case is I've duplicated the plugin of Spitfire Labs. So I have two instrument plugins, and one is just playing the random bleep bloops that I did, and the second is being arpeggiated. So if I just solo this, you'll hear the notes with the reverb and the delay. That's all great. If I go into this one, and just for this, I'm just going to turn off the effects just so you can hear it dry. So you can hear it's playing a similar thing, but, you know, slightly different in its own way. So if I just blend that in, and then we get the two of them. Now I can chuck the effects on. You get a couple of these really high notes poking out, you know, and it's got its own character, its own movement. It just sounds fantastic. And then we're just playing on top of that. Okay, so now that we have the piano bloops on top, I'm just going to play a little bit of piano on top of that, some dry piano, just so you can see how it fits in the context of it being like this ambience that we're adding. So let's go. Fantastic. So you can hear that, you know, having some piano ambience underneath the piano bed, it fits very nicely, it kind of works. But in the same idea, you could take that concept and flip it on its head. You can have the piano ambience on a guitar track or whatever, you know. So you have a lot of options in how you can use this, what instruments you choose to use this technique on. But at the end of the day, it's just random, it's fun, you know, it's just experimenting at the end. So make what you want of that. Okay, so lastly, I'm just going to leave you on one more technique. I didn't really want to do this because I want to try keep every episode like one technique. But since it's the first, I figured I'll give you a couple. So the next one requires the OP1. This bad boy, you've seen it, you know what it is, you love it, you hate the price of it, but we're going to use it to make some vocal pads. Okay, so I've got it set up on the sampler. I'm just going to get the sampler open. You can hear that goodness. I'm just going to sing a C. Nice and short. This is going to allow us that when it's looping, it's going to give us a lot of random lengths, because obviously as a sampler every note you play will be a different length, whether it's higher or lower. So in this case, the original note and an octave down. Yeah, you get the idea. So I'm just gonna stick a bit of reverb on here, a little bit of a spring. Alright, we got that spring. Now same concept, I'm just gonna play couple random notes in C major, I guess C, D, and G. Flick between those, maybe add some glides and stuff, and we'll see what we can add. Let's go. So you can hear my pitching is a bit funny on that, but it's no problem. We're just going to cover it in delay and reverb as always and see how this sits in the back of our piano ballad. Let's go. Lovely, you know, it adds this kind of sense of mystery and wonder, a really random texture to chuck in there, but I've just put on some reverb and delay. Definitely helps smooth things out and just chuck it a bit more in the background. But you know, I'm a fan of this. I'm a fan of just kind of adding any of these random notes or random ambience, I guess you could say, to your music. It definitely brings a lot more level to your production, a higher level quality, I feel, because it's not, you know, your everyday sound. And I think when people hear sonics like that they're not used to, it's always quite exciting, you know, for whatever the person. When you hear an interesting thing in a song that's panning left to right, you're like, what the hell is going on there? It's just that, you know, you're just building up on the idea that it's just a bed of like this ambience. Alright, so that's basically it for today. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like, subscribe and comment, do all that good jazz. This is the first episode of Creative Musical Ideas, so if you enjoyed it, please feel free to let me know below. I'll be sure to be doing more of these. And if you haven't seen it already, I've got loads of videos on here of me making songs from scratch or just talking about production, whether that's Ableton or Logic or, you know, just some production tips. So feel free to subscribe to stay tuned for more. And once again, I've been Chris Vella, and I will see you on the next one.